Imagine standing before the most powerful man in the world. Not as a queen, not as a princess, but as a young woman everyone believed was unworthy of respect. Imagine an empire where your birth decided your future, where people looked at your family and believed they already knew how your story would end. Now imagine proving every one of them wrong. Because this young woman would one day save an emperor, change the laws of an empire, and become one of the most influential women in history. Her name was Theodora. But before she wore a crown, she was simply a little girl, growing up in the noisy streets of Constantinople. This is her story. Around the year 500 AD, the city of Constantinople was unlike any other place on Earth. Merchants arrived from Asia. Ships filled its busy harbor. Magnificent churches rose above crowded streets. And at the center of it all, the emperor ruled the mighty Byzantine Empire. But far from the imperial palace lived a little girl named Theodora. She was not born into a noble family. Her father worked at the city's great hippodrome, a vast stadium where thousands gathered to watch thrilling chariot races. It was one of the loudest and most exciting places in the empire. Theodora spent her childhood surrounded by cheering crowds, colorful racing teams, musicians, performers, and endless excitement. But behind the excitement, life was difficult. When Theodora was still very young, her father died. His death left the family with almost nothing. Her mother struggled to support her children. Every day became a fight for survival. Instead of growing up in comfort, Theodora learned something far more valuable. She learned how quickly fortune could disappear. As she grew older, she watched the wealthy nobles pass through the city in fine silk robes. She watched powerful officials giving orders. She watched ordinary people working from sunrise until night. She noticed everything. She listened carefully. She remembered faces. She learned how people spoke, how they persuaded others, how they gained power. Few people realized it then, but the little girl quietly observing the world around her was already preparing for a future no one could imagine. History remembers emperors for the armies they commanded, but sometimes the greatest strength begins with something much quieter: the ability to watch, to learn, and to wait. As Theodora grew older, she discovered that life in Constantinople was far from fair. The Byzantine Empire was one of the richest civilizations on Earth. Its palaces glittered with gold. Its churches amazed travelers from distant lands. Its merchants traded silk, spices, and precious jewels. But wealth did not belong to everyone. Most ordinary families struggled to survive. For women, life could be especially difficult. Your future was often decided by your family, your social class, or the people who held power over you. Very few women had the chance to influence politics. Almost none could imagine changing an empire. Yet, Theodora refused to believe that her future had already been written. She possessed something that no one could take away: a sharp mind. She listened more than she spoke. She watched how powerful people behaved. She noticed who told the truth and who simply told others what they wanted to hear. Every conversation became a lesson. Every mistake she witnessed became knowledge. As a young woman, Theodora traveled beyond Constantinople for a time. Those journeys showed her different cities, different cultures, and different ways of life. She also saw something else: poverty, injustice, people with no voice. Years later, those memories would shape many of the laws she supported. Eventually, Theodora returned to Constantinople, but she was no longer the same young woman who had left. She had become wiser, more confident, and far more determined. Fate was quietly preparing two remarkable people who had never met. One was an ambitious young woman who refused to accept the limits placed upon her. The other was a brilliant government official who dreamed of restoring the glory of the Roman Empire. His name was Justinian. Neither of them knew it yet, but their meeting would change history forever. Around the year 522 AD, fate finally brought two extraordinary people together. One was Justinian, a brilliant statesman and the nephew of the Byzantine Emperor. He dreamed of restoring the greatness of the Roman Empire. The other was Theodora, a woman who had experienced both hardship and opportunity, and who had learned to understand people better than most nobles ever could. Their meeting changed both of their lives. Justinian quickly realized something others had overlooked. Theodora was intelligent. She spoke with confidence. She understood politics, human nature, and the struggles of ordinary people. Soon, respect became admiration. Admiration became love. But there was one enormous problem. According to Byzantine law, a man of Justinian's rank was not allowed to marry someone from Theodora's background. The law stood between them. Many powerful nobles opposed the marriage. Some believed she would never be accepted by the royal court. Others feared her growing influence. But Justinian refused to give up. Instead, he persuaded Emperor Justin I to change the law itself. The restriction was removed, and in 525 AD, Justinian and Theodora were finally married. It was more than a royal wedding. It was the beginning of one of history's most remarkable partnerships. Only 2 years later, in 527 AD, Justinian became emperor of the Byzantine Empire. Beside him, Theodora was crowned empress. For the young girl who had once watched wealthy nobles pass through the streets, the impossible had become reality. But becoming empress would prove far easier than keeping an empire together, because a storm was already beginning to gather inside Constantinople, one that would soon threaten everything. Theodora had become empress, but within a few years, Constantinople would erupt into one of the deadliest riots in history. An angry crowd would demand the emperor's death. The imperial palace would be surrounded. Even Justinian prepared to flee. Only one person refused to run: Empress Theodora. By 532 AD, Justinian and Theodora ruled one of the richest empires on earth. But beneath Constantinople's glittering palaces, anger was growing. Heavy taxes, political rivalries, and public frustration filled the streets. The city's famous chariot racing teams, the Blues and the Greens, were far more than sports clubs. They were powerful political groups with thousands of passionate supporters. One January afternoon, tension finally exploded. A crowd gathered inside the Hippodrome. Instead of cheering for their favorite teams, thousands of voices joined together with a single cry: Nika! It meant victory. But this was no celebration. It was the beginning of one of the most dangerous rebellions in Byzantine history. The angry crowd poured into the streets. Government buildings were burned. Prisons were opened. Shops and homes caught fire. Soon, much of Constantinople was covered in smoke. Even the magnificent Hagia Sophia was destroyed by the flames. The rioters demanded only one thing: the emperor must fall. Inside the Great Palace, fear spread quickly. Some advisors urged Justinian to escape while he still could. Ships waited at the harbor. If the emperor fled, his life might be saved. Justinian hesitated. For a moment, the future of the Byzantine Empire hung in the balance. Then, everyone turned toward one person: Empress Theodora. She stood calmly before the frightened court and spoke words that would change history forever. According to the historian Procopius, she declared, "Royal purple makes a fine burial shroud." In other words, she believed it was better to die as empress than live as a fugitive. Her courage transformed the room. Justinian abandoned every thought of escape. Instead, he prepared to fight. The fate of an empire would now be decided. Theodora had convinced the emperor to stay, but words alone could not save an empire. Outside the palace, 30,000 angry rebels waited. The next decision would determine the future of the Byzantine Empire forever. The palace gates remained closed. Outside, thousands of rebels filled the hippodrome. Inside, the emperor had made his decision. He would stay. Not because his generals convinced him, not because his ministers inspired him, but because one woman refused to surrender. Justinian turned to his most trusted general, Belisarius. His mission was simple: end the rebellion. Belisarius gathered loyal soldiers. Another experienced commander, Mundus, joined him. Together they marched toward the hippodrome, where tens of thousands of rebels had gathered. Many believed they had already won. Some even prepared to crown a new emperor. They had no idea. Imperial troops were approaching from several entrances at once. When the gates closed behind them, escape became almost impossible. The fighting was swift, brutal, and decisive. According to historical accounts, around 30,000 people were killed during the suppression of the Nika Riots. The rebellion collapsed. Justinian remained emperor. The Byzantine Empire survived. It was one of the bloodiest moments in its history. Yet, many historians believe the empire itself might have fallen if Theodora had not stood firm inside the palace. In the years that followed, Justinian and Theodora began rebuilding Constantinople. From the ashes of the old city rose one of the greatest architectural masterpieces ever created: the new Hagia Sophia. Its massive dome amazed the world. For nearly 1,000 years, it remained the largest cathedral on Earth. The empire had survived, and now it would rise again. Theodora had saved the throne. The empire had been rebuilt. But her greatest legacy was still to come. She would change the lives of countless women across the Byzantine Empire through laws that were centuries ahead of their time. The Nika Riots were over. Constantinople had risen from the ashes. But Theodora's greatest achievement was not saving the throne. It was changing the lives of countless people, especially women. As empress, Theodora encouraged laws that offered greater protection to women than many societies of her time. She supported measures against forced prostitution. She helped establish homes where vulnerable women could rebuild their lives. She strengthened legal protections in marriage. And she encouraged women to have greater rights in matters of property and inheritance. For the 6th century, these ideas were remarkable. She understood suffering because she had lived through it herself. Her past became her greatest strength. Together, Justinian and Theodora transformed the Byzantine Empire. They reformed its laws, strengthened its government, expanded its borders, and left behind magnificent monuments that still inspire millions today. But no reign lasts forever. In 548 AD, after serving as empress for more than 20 years, Theodora died, likely after battling a serious illness. She was only about 48 years old. Justinian was devastated. Though he ruled for many more years, many historians believe he was never quite the same without her. Yet, Theodora's influence did not disappear. More than 14 centuries later, her name is still remembered. Not because she was born into power, but because she rose above the limits others placed upon her. She proved that wisdom, courage, and determination could change the course of history. History remembers many queens, many empresses, many rulers. But very few changed an empire simply by refusing to give up. That was Empress Theodora. Theodora's story reminds us that where we begin in life does not always determine where we finish. She was judged by her background, doubted by the powerful, and underestimated by nearly everyone. Yet when history demanded courage, she became the strongest person in the room. Perhaps real leadership isn't about never feeling fear. Perhaps it's about choosing to stand firm, even when everyone else is ready to run. Today's new words. 1. Rebellion. A fight against a government or ruler. 2. Resolve. Strong determination to do something. 3. Legacy. What someone leaves behind for future generations. 4. Reform. To improve a system by making changes. 5. Resilience. The ability to recover from difficulties. If you had been inside the palace during the Nika Riots, would you have chosen to flee with Justinian or stay and fight with Theodora? Share your thoughts in the comments.